Hello and welcome to Family History Adventures. My name is Maiken Higbee and I am the daughter-in-law of Jay and Vayshell Higbee. I'm married to their second son, Ben. We have just enjoyed beautiful scenes from Mink Creek, Idaho, where Vayshell grew up. We hope that you enjoy watching this DVD and that will help you to preserve and cherish your family history memories. We just listened to Vayshell's clarinet solo concertino. As an honor student, she was asked to play the solo at Preston High School graduation 40 years ago. It was recorded on a reel-to-reel tape recorder, then copied onto a cassette tape a few years later. Then it was transferred to a CD, and it is now on this DVD. Vayshell was accompanied by her friend, Elaine Johnston. Jay and Vayshell have enjoyed working together the past few years compiling family history books. They will soon complete their 12th book, totaling over 7,000 pages. Hundreds of copies from 9 of their books have been sold. They will order their 1,000th family history book in the fall of 2007. We, their family and friends, are excited to celebrate the success of these family history books. Here's a glimpse behind the scenes and the inspiring story behind the books. As most of you know, compiling family history books takes a lot of time and a tremendous amount of hard work. This story begins with Vayshell's dad, Carl Christensen, who is a very hard worker, taking the time to teach Vayshell how to work on their farm in Mink Creek. He encouraged her to feed calves, pet lambs, and goats night and morning. He also taught her to drive trucks and tractors. Besides gardening and housework, some other work that she helped with on the farm was tromping wool, milking cows, feeding cattle, trailing sheep, and hauling hay. Vayshell's father always encouraged her to write. He had faith in her to achieve. "You can do it," he always said, as he taught her a new skill and as she worked hard to prove him right. When Vayshell was young, she was often left to babysit. Her family lived a mile away from the nearest neighbors, and she was really scared. She dreaded babysitting so much that she became sick to her stomach whenever she had to do it. Vayshell's older siblings were involved in other things.
I decided to pray, and the thought came to me to look at my mother's Book of Remembrance. It was heavy for me, but I got it off the shelf, sat my brother and sister down, and we looked at the pictures. A feeling of peace and comfort came over me. After that, every time I had to babysit, we would look at this book. I developed a great love for my mother's Book of Remembrance. I loved my parents' wedding picture and their marriage certificate from the Logan Temple. I decided then and there that I would get married in the temple, too. When I was a teenager, I was depressed sometimes. One of the things that helped me to feel better was working on my own Book of Remembrance. I always felt better as I organized my own pictures, awards, and certificates. Under the direction of Carl Mortensen, our stake president, and Bishop Rodney Jensen, my mother, Lena Barrington Christensen, taught a Book of Remembrance class after Sunday school to a group of teenagers. I was one of them. I loved this class. Later, she taught us a course in basic genealogy. I especially loved to go on the outings to the genealogy libraries in Logan and in Salt Lake City. We toured the church's record vault up Little Cottonwood Canyon, and we did baptisms for the dead in the Logan Temple. I loved how good I felt as we did these activities. I now realize that sometimes when I babysat, my mother was probably taking classes in the stake to learn about genealogy. My mother had the students in her class write letters in search of information. My brother Vance found a name and address in a phone book and discovered third cousins living in Birmingham, England. They helped us with our genealogy. They belonged to the Church of England. Neville and Marion came to America twice, and some of our family visited them in England. After I was married, I found it hard to stay home and be a mother. Again, I found solace through adding Jay's pictures and certificates to my Book of Remembrance and working on my children's books. I wrote their histories and shared their pictures with them as they grew up. Now they are grown.
Almost everyone in the Higbee family has graduated from college, and 3 of them have additional degrees. Jay, Paul, Ben, Mark, Ginger, and Nate have all served missions. Vachelle served a stake mission, and Anne waited for her missionary. And now we'd like to share a little bit with you of the Higbee family's history.
When Paul was about 5, we lived in Arizona. He quite liked Family Home Evening and the illustrated stories from the Book of Mormon. One day his mother found him with all his non-member friends lined up. They were casting lots to see who would go to get the brass plates.
Paul, Zenaida, and James visited in Oregon. Paul, the first child in the family, is a natural leader. He's a manager at his work and is very responsible and self-motivated. He married Zenaida Katapunan, and they have 3 children. Paul enjoys scouting. He directed the move of his sister Ginger to her new house in 2006.
As far as fishing in Mink Creek at Grandma's, one year our kids did all kinds of extra work to earn money for fishing poles. Ben never did catch a fish, but one time he swung the line back over his head and hooked a sheep. It started running away and the line broke. Uncle Forrest wasn't too happy about losing his hook.
Ben is having fun wave running. Ben took first in the decathlon while he was at BYU 2 years in a row. Dr. Higbee is now a chiropractor for the BYU athletic department, and he has his own chiropractic clinic. He married Maiken Matson, and they have 5 children.
Mark was the fastest runner in his first grade class and won 3 first-place ribbons on field day in the spring of 1980. He took first in the 50-yard dash, the 75-yard dash, and the 100-yard dash. He still holds the school record at Centerville Junior High for the 200-meter dash. Mark enjoyed singing at age 5.
The wheels on the bus go round and round, round and round, round and round, all through the town. The wipers on the bus go all through the town. The money in the box goes clink, 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 all through the town. The mummies on the bus go all through the town. The babies on the bus go wah, 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 all through the town. The drivers on the bus go read, read, move on back, move on back. The fathers on the bus go read, 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 all through the town.
Mark walked on the BYU football team after his mission. He's number 32. Mark is now very successful at his computer job where he makes web pages. He has also done wedding videos and has put together this Family History Adventure DVD. Mark is also an avid skier. Mark did a wonderful job taking videos of himself and the family.
One day before Ginger turned 3, she was helping her mother make cupcakes for Family Home Evening. Her mom kept telling her how glad she was that Heavenly Father had sent her. When they finished with the cupcakes, Vachelle started to make dinner. Ginger asked what she was fixing. Her mom told her split pea soup. Ginger's response was, "Heavenly Father didn't send little girls down here to eat that stuff." Here's Ginger singing at age 3.
Mary was the baby, the wise men must come far. They're riding on their camels, their father leads the star. Joseph walked the baby, Mary shut the door. They are still a-coming, those men who also wise. Joseph lead a donkey. To Egypt we must go. Mary heard my baby, because we love him so.
Yet, Ginger has moved ahead with her life. She bought a house last year and has continued her education. She completed her MBA at Weber State University, being the only girl in her graduating class. She found a much better job. She is a joy to those who know her.
Nathan had to make a value shield in school when he was 7. We were quite impressed to learn that his values were already set in place at that early age.
Okay, we're gonna do our magic trick. Okay, ready?
Yeah.
Matt! See what you did? Matt, look what you did!
No, I didn't.
Yes, you did!
No, I didn't.
Now we can't do it.
No, you don't do it.
All right, let's use the box.
Behold, the magic box.
It's magic box number 1, crafted by Nate in his spare time. You ready, Julie? Just open it. Sorry, Julie.
As we have seen, Nathan likes practical jokes. He even has done a few magic shows from his own inventions. He graduated from BYU and just completed his master's degree in electrical engineering at Utah State University. He's now enjoying working at a great job. He just got married to Tammy later. Hey, that's me!
When Ann was 2, we walked to the new stake center. We walked again the next Sunday. She seemed to know the way home, so I decided to follow along, keep her safe, and see if she knew the way. She walked a block, crossed Main Street, walked a half a block, and turned to go to our house. She knew the way.
Anne is very happy to be a registered nurse. She graduated from Weber State. She's married to Will Rogers and loves being a mother to their son Alex. As you've seen, Anne has excelled in organ playing. She also loves to paint.
When Matthew was a little kid, he was playing around one day with lots of energy. I asked him if someone had put 50 cents in him. He said, "Yeah, Nathan," and pulled out 2 quarters out of his pockets to show me. Matthew didn't ask for help to get a drink of water.
Participating in sports such as baseball, basketball, football, soccer, and track helped greatly to establish all of the Higbee children's self-esteem. They interacted with great teammates and felt a sense of belonging. Their parents attended their games, and they knew that they are important members of their family. For example, in 4th grade, Matthew, who liked to play soccer, wrote, "I'm important. I'm worth more than a Nintendo 64 because my family loves me and I am a good friend. I know that I'm important because I take turns. I am the youngest in my family. I am a brother." Matthew recently received his Eagle Scout Award. He's a great leader. He has worked for the Provo City Library for nearly 2 years to earn money for college and his mission. He graduated from Tempview High School and was awarded a scholarship to BYU this fall.
I'm really interested in history.
My mom has spent a lot of time compiling our family history. I've helped her proofread some of these stories, and I've used some of these stories in church talks and church history and told them to my kids. It's great, and it's been very beneficial for our family. In 1984, my mother taught a personal history class in Sunday school. She loved this calling and relied on President Kimball's insight. He said, "And again, I urge you to be diligent in recording your personal and family histories. You are unique, and there may be incidents in your experience that are more noble and praiseworthy in their way than in any other life. Do it now." The personal history class taught by my mother had no lesson manual. She made weekly handouts, and at the end of the class she compiled them into a 36-page booklet entitled Personal History Ideas. My mother continued to work on her own book of remembrance. She also taught a family history class for several weeks as a Relief Society midweek activity. Eventually, she divided her book of remembrance into several books, including a book of remembrance for each of the children. She encouraged us to work on these books with her on Sunday afternoons.
I got a book.
It's for your book of remembrance. Wow.
Oh, I got one of those.
My parents also provided us each with a big activity binder and plastic sleeves where we could insert our important papers and keep track of our pictures. Here's an example of an activity page that my brother Nathan made. President Dennis Lifrith in Centerville encouraged everyone in the state to do something special to celebrate the turn of the century. My mother completed this Higbee family history. He was very impressed. He said that it is a gold mine and thanked her for doing this great service for our family. After compiling this very large book, which will be updated and printed in 2 volumes, my mother had a very strong feeling come over her that she is a very good person. This book proved it. Her self-esteem improved dramatically. Here are a couple of poems from this book.
My Family, a poem by Nathan Higbee when he was 18. My family is a computer, complex and integrated. My dad is the microprocessor, the brains. My mom is the software, she tells him what to do. My sister is the memory, she stores what's going on. My brother is the speaker, the loudest one of all. I am the joystick, the one who plays the game. Family Gatherings, a poem by Anne Higbee when I was 16. Lying on the floor with drooping eyes, I listen to the chatter of my kin. Conversation roams from topic to topic, family reunions, practical jokes, and things far gone. Laughter fills the living room like sweet bells tinkling in the gentle wind. Happiness and cheerfulness course through each soul, all feel the wondrous family love, embracing and comforting our world-stricken hearts. Content and joyful now, I feel my eyelids gently close to relax in the atmosphere of unconditional, tender family love.
I'm Will Rogers, son-in-law. The third family history book is a book about Jay, his parents, and his family. Jay recorded Dwayne and Blanche telling us about their lives in 1978, 81, and 84. Vayshelle began by transcribing these tapes and adding pictures to the text. She enjoyed this. Then they went on some really fun trips in their little green Honda to the places mentioned in these tapes. They took additional pictures. Vayshelle said it took her breath away as they drove around a bend and saw that the barn they'd seen in some black and white pictures was still standing. It was awesome. It was like going back in time. They stood there on that wheat farm in Washington and pondered, realizing that it had been more than 50 years since Jay's family had left. It was so quiet. It was a very special place. Now listen to Dwayne, Jay's dad, tell about when he was young.
About 30, 35 tons a day most of the time. And in good hay we did, and poor hay we didn't. And some of it was pretty good hay, some wasn't. And when I was 13, my dad told me to just go along and work what I could. And he'd come help me. He was a field pitcher, you know. You'd pitch on your boat, and then after a while, when the Peebles picture got that last boat unloaded, he'd come over and help you, see. And the last of your load, why, there'd be two of you working. And he was pretty good heavy worker, and he'd pitch enough that I kept my place in line with the men. And when I got to be 14 and 15, I did that most of the time. Then when I got to be 16, I'd had to work hard all the time, see. And I was hungry at 10 o'clock in the morning, and at 4 o'clock in the afternoon I could hardly make it the rest of the day. And now I think back and I wonder why in the dickens I didn't take a sandwich out with me. I could have eaten a sandwich at 10 o'clock and 4 o'clock and done fine. But I just couldn't eat enough to last me through. And we worked about 9 hours and a half a day, and that was pretty hard work. When I was 16, my dad said, "This is a highball outfit, but all you got to do is stay with that kid. If you stay with him, you're all right." And I was 16 years old. When I was 17 and 18, he says, "You just work along and do your work. You don't have to stay with that kid. He's crazy."
Here is a story by Jay's mother, Blanche.
Grandmother and father had a nice family of children. And my mother was the 10th child in that family. And so they said since she was the 10th child in the family, that they were going to give her to the bishop when she grew up, because she would be the tithing that they would pay on having that big family. And Mom has said quite often, I remember saying that she often wondered for a while if they really meant it, because she thought since she was the 10th child, she'd have to go live with a bishop.
Get her anyway.
A bishop did get her, because Dad was a bishop later on after that, and she's laughed quite often about that.
Aunt Idris Beck was a great help with all the books. She always had a listening ear and provided wise counsel. She found a lot of pictures and shared some of her beautiful poems.
Different ways. Today the field was full of grain until the hungry combine came. Swath after swath, without any trouble, it chomped off heads, leaving only stubble. Big trucks were filled, then drove away. Our grain was harvested in a single day. Memories flashed through my mind of a harvest of a different kind. Then to my young son I said, "You know, harvest time was not always so. Your grandfather did it another way. It wasn't finished in just one day." Before combines and trucks came on the scene, cutting was done with a horse-drawn machine. Quite unlike today's combine, it sent out bundles tied with twine, to be stacked later with heads turned in, waiting for threshing to begin. Many workers made up the crew, for there was truly much to do. There wasn't time to watch and wait as grain from straw would separate. The workers hurried the bags to fill and haul by wagons to bins or the mill. Not only the men had work to do, your grandmother was kept busy too. She cooked the meals for those hungry men who filled their plates again and again. Once satisfied, they went back to work, for threshing time was no time to shirk. Grandfather sat listening all the while. Then turning to us, he began to smile. "Oh my," said he, "those were good days. So different from the old-time ways when my father walked all day in the field, swinging a scythe to gather his yield."
Jay's sister, Janet Higby Wilkes Reynolds, scanned a lot of pictures and sent them to Vachel on CDs. She also copied her mother's school and missionary journals and mailed them. In addition, she sent some emails pertaining to her parents' book, and she wrote pages of memories about them. She also provided information about her own family. She did a lot of work which Jay and Vachel really appreciate. With every book, Vachel and Jay experienced opposition, such as sickness, computer problems, and upset relatives. After asking for several opinions, taking very careful consideration and praying about it, everything that every relative submitted was included in every book. Some relatives are still upset. After the first incident, Vachel told other unhappy relatives just to take a pair of scissors and cut out the pages they didn't like when they got their books.
I am Ruth Stringham, a neighbor. Vachel asked me for some advice about unhappy relatives. She had already included in her book what one relative had written. I felt it was only fair for her to put in what the others had written also. I was very excited and humbled when Vachel put my poem, Judge Not, in some of her books. In 1976, my bishop in Lodi, California, asked if I would give a talk in sacrament meeting on why we should not judge others. As I finished preparing my talk, I felt the desire to summarize the 5 points of why we should not judge others. As I went to bed, I prayed for help in summarizing those 5 points. At about 1 a.m., I awoke with words going through my mind. I arose and wrote this poem, Judge Not. Help me, dear Lord, by this day's end, to have been no judge of my fellow men. Help me to realize and find I know not all in another's mind. And may I to myself be true, and not judge others by the wrongs I do. May I understand more fully each day, to meet judgment of others is a thought I must stay. For with those same judgments that I make, may well be determined my own fate. Instead of finding his faults to condemn, I will his true virtues learn to defend. And if I forget and start judging again, remind me I cannot see into the hearts of men. Only God can.
When my family moved to Provo in 2001, my mom considered going back to BYU to get a degree in family history. She asked the bishop what he thought, and he told her that BYU would be there next year, but some of her aunts and uncles might not be. So my parents purchased a used laptop. With it and our scanner, they traveled to our aunts' and uncles' homes and scanned their pictures that pertained to our family. They also collected histories, family group sheets, and enjoyed visiting with them. They went back to some homes several times. Listen to some fun they had in 2003.
Well, let's have Aunt Pearl tell us about when she first got married, because Uncle Alan was the oldest. What was the Christensen family like? How old was Aunt Alma? What did you think of them?
Well, it was a normal farm life. There wasn't maybe too much difference because from Preston, some of them had indoor plumbing and some people didn't. So as far as coming to Mick Creek and no indoor plumbing, that was just normal. Mm-hmm. And the farm, it was I had been raised on the farm, so even though I was come from the city, I knew farm life, so it wasn't much different for me. The family was quite unique. They came up in April, and it was sheep time. We were lambing sheep and that, so there was all the mud and everything to haul in and out of the house.
Aunt Pearl Christensen, who will soon be 94, was thrilled when she got her 2 Christensen books. My parents collected so much information they ended up with Volume 1 and Volume 2. She was mostly blind, but she still considered the books an incredible treasure. Uncles and aunts have died, and some have moved in with their children, and their family records are displaced. It was fortunate that my parents collected the information when they did.
I am Valora Meekum, Vachel's aunt. Jay and Vachel's next 2 books were about my parents, Loris Henry and Serena Christensen, and their families. They got so much cooperation that they ended up with 2 volumes. My sister Elma and I made a lot of phone calls to cousins. It was a lot of fun to help with this book. Vachelle sent a lot of emails and letters and talked on the phone to a lot of relatives she didn't know. She said this was hard for her at first, but she got better at it and her confidence increased. One of the really special experiences in Volume 1 had to do with my mother. About 3 months after Jay and Vachelle had begun work on the book, Vachelle came across this entry from my mother's journal. How do you do? That was May 26, 1969, 12 noon. How thankful I must be for Valora. She fixed these sheets, so now I must try to write every day. Someday here will be some material for a book. I have some granddaughter that I think could do it. My mother, Serena Christensen, then proceeded to write the history of her mother. Vachelle was amazed. She counted up and found that she was one of 20 granddaughters. She looked around and found that she was the one doing it.
It is interesting how the Lord provided a way for my parents to gain the additional knowledge they needed without my mother returning to school at BYU. In 2003, the genealogy chairman in my parents' ward, Verlin Frost, invited my mom and dad to attend the advanced genealogy class during Sunday school. This class was taught by Brother Grant Stevenson. Brother Stevenson is a retired BYU genealogy professor and a walking encyclopedia when it comes to genealogy. He provided the advice and help my parents needed to complete these books. One thing he taught them is that by the end of the millennium, most people will have over 1 million descendants. He said that we are now privileged to be laying the foundation of a very great and important work yet to come. Brother Stevenson also convinced my parents that most family history books are not complete without an index, encouraging my mom to incorporate indexes in her books. Brother Stevenson's son, Chris, printed my parents' black and white family history books. My parents offered all of their books to friends and family at cost. They did not charge for their time. The price averaged out to about $50 a book. My parents' fourth book, Histories of the Lars Henry and Serena Christensen Family, sold 200 copies. How did my parents deliver all these books? Pictured are 17 of 20 boxes. There are 10 books to a box. Each box weighs about 50 pounds. My parents drove from Provo, Utah to Mink Creek, Idaho, making stops along the way. They dropped books off at some relatives' homes where other relatives went to pick them up. This process was repeated several times for different books. Not all of the history books were delivered, however. Some books were mailed. Many of the books contained picture CDs of all the pictures shown in the books. These CDs were inserted into a plastic sleeve and placed inside the front cover of each book. Mark is carrying Christensen Volume 2 books that were being delivered at a family reunion in Preston, Idaho in 2004. As you can see, the relatives really appreciated receiving them. Carol Hatch, Rhonda Lowe, and Sonia Ray enjoyed the books.
Working on family history books has helped make our home a little bit more like heaven. My parents are happier and more content. They feel like they have been on a mission for the last few years.
They are so busy they hardly take time for themselves. They travel to visit relatives a lot on Saturdays. There is a lot of family history work to do, and they are doing it. My grandma's book is my parents' 6th family history book. Here are a few of the memories I have of my grandma when I was little. Being young, I didn't write very much, but my mother added pictures, and my memory page looks good. My mother put memory pages in most of the books so that all of the children and grandchildren could share their memories of their parents and grandparents. My grandma, Lena Christensen Samsel, wrote her own history. She had also written histories of my grandpa, her children, her parents, and her grandparents. This was a great help. It made compiling books a lot easier for my mother. My grandma went on several fun trips. Some were in search of genealogical information.
She kept a detailed journal and typed it up, so it was included in her book. Some pictures from her trips were added. In the posterity section of the books, my mother placed the family group sheet of each child and grandchild who was married next to that family's picture page. Since I am not married, my information is on my parents' family group sheet.
Hi, my mother's cousin Chris asked my mother to compile a book for her mother's family. My mother spent many hours scanning and organizing family group sheets and stories. This was my parents' 7th family history book.
My mother knew this book was going to be sent to many people who were not members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. When my mother thought of the ministers of other faiths reading it, she was really motivated to do her best. She knew that family history books are like the scriptures. They can be great missionary tools. Did you know that the first scripture was actually a book of remembrance? In Moses 6:5-6, we read, "And a book of remembrance was kept, in the which was recorded in the language of Adam, for it was given unto as many as called upon God to write by the Spirit of inspiration. And by them their children were taught to read and write, having a language which was pure and undefiled." The 8th book was a book on my mother's grandparents, Lewis and Elva Barrington and their family. This is the first book they offered in color. I sent a laser color printer up from Dallas, Texas, as a surprise for my mother for Christmas. Luckily, my dad paid for it. Later, they got a second one. I figured they were only going to print these books once, so color was only a one-time expense. I really like the books with colored pictures. Uncle Owain and Aunt Bonnie Barrington were pleased to help gather some of the material for this great book about Uncle Owain's parents. It was enjoyable for them to help with scanning pages from his mother's book of remembrance, which he had faithfully compiled over many years. Uncle Owain took my parents and Matthew up to his father's dry farm. This brought back a lot of memories to him, so it was easy for him to reminisce about earlier times. My mother took a lot of pictures. My mother and Uncle Owain sent out 100 letters in February, followed by flyers in July. Without the help they received from many relatives, this book would not have been possible. Uncle Owain and Aunt Bonnie thank all who helped, especially my mother for her vision of the finished product, then her talent and expertise in organizing and compiling it. Yes, and also for her good old-fashioned hard work. We are all proud of her accomplishments.
So one time, I'm at the doctor's office with my mom, and we're sitting there waiting for our turn. And this lady comes out of the office and sees that my mom's working on this book. And so she stops and talks to my mom about it for a little while, and then she's like, "Hey, I want to buy one of these books." So she pulls out her checkbook and orders a book right there on the spot. Apparently she'd been looking for some kind of pattern for something she wanted to do with her family.
She was amazed at all the cooperation we had received from the Barrington family. My mother had attended the Provo Temple and put relatives' names on the prayer roll. She prayed for improvement in their health, as well as for their cooperation. One day, as my mother was working on the Barrington book, she felt her grandmother Elva's presence. She was told in her thoughts to expand Aunt Alice's section. She then compiled the family group sheet on Aunt Alice's husband's first family, and learned about her stepchildren. In the process, she discovered that some temp work had not been done. At the Tri-State Family History Center, my parents searched census records and were able to prepare these names for the temple. A couple of days later, they went to the Provo Temple to do the baptism. Then Dad was proxy for the endowment, and they were sealed for 2 couples.
I'm Owen Rich, a former professor at BYU and founder of KBYU, one of my few claims to fame. I saw a Higbee book and asked Michelle if she would format my family history book. When she didn't say yes, I twisted her arm for a while, and she finally agreed to help me. I had already written the text, and I learned to scan my own pictures and slides. I noticed right away how Jay and Michelle worked together. They are a team indeed. Mine became Jay and Michelle's 9th family history book. Since it took us about 3 years of working off and on to finish it, we had a dinner party at the conclusion of our efforts to celebrate. I titled my book, A Lifetime of Romance and Adventure, the Personal Histories of Owen Sterling Rich and Ora Nielsen Rich. My dear friend Clark Moulton, who is 94, told the Higbees that I was proud as a peacock, and I am. I was also pleased that my good friend Ray Wilson was very impressed with my book, and I was asked to share my book in High Priest meeting, and they also were very complimentary. With the help of Vishel and Jay Higby in the production of my personal history book, I was able to relive many wonderful experiences. For example, reliving the forgotten excitement of growing up within the beautiful mountains and valleys of southeastern Idaho, rekindling the memories of youth and romance, remembering the sweet togetherness of a wonderful life with my sweetheart, and once again enjoying the joy of family activities, picnics, birthdays, Christmases of the past. Thank you so much, Vishel and Jay Higby.
I am Valora Meekum. My sister Elma Walker is holding wool carders, which were used to smooth wool into batting. We had sheep in Mink Creek, Idaho, where we grew up. Her history became Vishel's and Jay's 10th book. Vishel finished it and 2 other books in time for Christmas. After working on her book for 8 years, Elma finally finished the task. She was very pleased. She is 85 years old.
And Elma's husband, Grant, died in 1989, and Elma and Vishel put in some long days together. And Elma came down from Bountiful to our house in Provo several times and stayed overnight. She took us out to dinner several times. Vishel especially appreciated that, after the long days of working hard, we really enjoyed helping her with her book. Our 11th book was a different family history experience. Our Higby ancestors were part of the early history of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. There were lots of sources of information available, and it soon became a gigantic research paper. It is 742 pages. Vishel referenced practically everything. We especially enjoyed our trips to Nauvoo. We traveled to Wisconsin to our son Paul's home, and then we would all drive down to Nauvoo. Nathan took pictures with the digital camera, and Mark kept the video camera going. Some of our Higby ancestors lived in Nauvoo and knew Joseph Smith. After going through the Nauvoo Temple open house, I stood across the street and looked at the front of the temple. I realized that the new building was the same size as the original. I was impressed by how much the pioneers accomplished with the little bit they had to work with, all the while withstanding persecution. One of the guides said that the original temple made the papers all over the East because it was such a remarkable accomplishment, especially since it was out on the frontier.
My name is Elizabeth Higby. I like family history books. My grandma Vishel included a family home evening guide in the second Higby book. She listed gospel topics and the pages on which to find them. My parents can easily find good stories for our family home evenings and also from my talks in primary. There are lots of interesting pictures about pioneers in the book too. My grandma sent out 300 flyers to relatives in Utah, Idaho, and Arizona. She sure liked a lot of envelopes. Our family visited the historical monuments in Provo with Grandma and Grandpa. There is a lot of information in Provo. We had just moved back to Utah from Wisconsin. Uncle Mark took pictures of us as we learned about the early history of Provo and how John Somers Higby and his brother Isaac Higby helped to settle it. Their names are on the monument. Michael and I like to climb on it.
Both the 11th and 12th family history books contain lots of histories and pictures and genealogy that we obtained from Aunt Alta Higby Johnson Jacobson. She has collected 13 file cabinets full of information. We ask her to share some of her thoughts with us concerning family history.
Doing family history work has been a blessing to me. Time doesn't drag, and I have no feeling of being useless, depressed, or my life being wasted. Helping others brings peace and a sense of worth, as people are involved in retrieving memories, pictures, and and data on themselves and on members of their families. We sometimes lift hands that hang down and comfort those in need as their enthusiasm grows. When Vachelle spoke of pondering whether to get a degree or do family history books, I told her she didn't need a degree. She has a gift. It's amazing how well she has done so many books. Both Vachelle and Jay possess great talent, and working together they have accomplished wonderful things, the effects of which will not end with us but continue on down through generations. I am glad she and Jay came to me for information before I leave this mortal life. I'm 89 years of age, and the only one living that I know of who has gathered some of the information I have given them to use.
Martha Watson Cook, first cousin to Jay's father, Oliver Duane Higbee, opened up her large books of remembrance and shared her pictures, histories, memories, certificates, and letters. Her generosity and support and encouragement were of great help. This is half a page from her book of remembrance. Many Meservey and Kingsbury descendants will benefit from her record keeping when they read the 12th Family History Book, which is Meservey Kingsbury, Frontiers of Hope. In addition to her books of remembrance, Martha has 29 journal history books. One of the best things that has come from compiling family history books is the association with relatives that we have met along the way. One of these is Diane Higbee. She has a lot of enthusiasm for family history and is so excited to help. She went to the Salt Lake City Cemetery in cold January 2007 to take pictures of the headstones of ancestors. She also supplied some other information for Meservey Kingsbury Frontiers of Hope. She loves family history so much that her wish is to take all her family history books with her when she dies. She will probably have them memorized. She is a daughter of Glenn and Mary Higbee and a granddaughter of Leo and Greta Higbee.
From history stored away in one of Aunt Alta's file cabinets, we learn that Chester, the 18-year-old son of Joseph Meservey, was drowned just below the bridge in St. Anthony, Idaho. This happened in the Snake River on May 26, 1890. Chester had been helping to float logs down the river. In May 2006, seeing how deep and swift the water was helped us to appreciate the sad event that occurred in our family history.
A touching history in Meservey Kingsbury Frontiers of Hope is about my mother-in-law, Eleanor Meservey. Eleanor's father was a polygamist who had married 3 sisters. He lived with another wife who had cancer. Eleanor's mother had died when Eleanor was 10. Her father had no time or money for his orphan children. She and her brother Francis were children number 35 and 36. They often felt unwanted in the various homes as they went to bed hungry. Eleanor did many household tasks to pay for their keep. At 16, she married Oliver Kingsbury Meservey, having had only 11 months of schooling. Her daughter Colleen wrote, "Innumerable were the hardships of mother, not only during childhood, but during her entire married life. I recall many bleak winters when the thrift and frugality of my mother, not only in putting up hundreds of quarts of fruit and vegetables, but her ability to pinch pennies made it possible to maintain life. She has always been very ambitious, a hard worker, completing any given task faster than anyone I've ever known." What I mainly want to recall here is a dream which I remember Mother telling she had. She was climbing a long, long flight of stairs. It seemed it would never end, and the struggle to reach the top was almost beyond human endurance and capability. But in her dream she never stopped, but always looking above, she struggled on. Finally her foot reached the top stair, and before her dazzled eyes stood the Savior. He smiled and reached out his hand to her.
Family History Adventures is our 3rd family history DVD. I have worked on wedding DVDs and other family history DVDs, and I enjoy it a lot. The Mean Creek Pioneers was our first family history DVD and accompanies my parents' 4th book. Here's a video clip from it.
When I came to Mean Creek,
then I walked up the road with a satchel because I stayed down by Alvin Peterson. That was where I stayed. And she said her husband, John C., was over on the river fighting a fire. And so when he came, he was glad because he had a nice looking boy. And then he turned around and found a $10 gold piece, and he paid me for that. And that became my praise. Inga was Norwegian, so she could understand me. And my language was poor too. And I have a lot of laughs of all the mistakes I made. But it can't be helped. Now, John C. had a brother that was 10 years younger than him. His name was Lars Henry Christensen. And he had a blacktop buggy. And Inga said that he should take me for a ride down to see the lady that lived quite a ways down the road. And he did that, and then he wanted to know if we could go to the rallies. Then they brought the men that they wanted to vote for. They brought them to the church house.
Our second DVD was a surprise for my grandmother's 85th birthday party and is based on her book. Everyone loved the DVD. A highlight of this DVD is my grandmother Lena Christensen Samsel and great-grandmother Elva Lorraine Taylor Barrington singing together over 30 years ago. My great-grandmother died in 1982. As we listened to them sing, it felt like she was there.
Soft as the voice of an angel, breathing our lesson unheard, hope with a gentle persuasion, whispers her comforting words. Wait till the darkness is over. Wait till the tempest is done. Hope for the sunshine tomorrow after the shower is gone. Whispering, whispering hope, oh how welcome thy voice, how welcome thy voice, making my heart in his sorrow rejoice.
My dad is signaling to Ruth Stringham to start talking for the recording. He recorded everyone who participated in the Family History Adventures DVD, both the video and the audio. He is happy when he is helping others, and he enjoys using his talents as he assists in accumulating and transmitting family records. I taught my mom how to capture and edit the videos. She got good at it, and I wondered if she needed my help anymore. She assured me that she still needs my help. We decided that she would capture and I would edit. Here's some of the videotapes, audio tapes, CDs, and DVDs that we captured and edited movie clips from. I have also cleaned up pictures. My mother emailed this one to me. I fixed it on my computer and I emailed it back. This is my third great-grandfather, John Summers Higbee, and some of his family.
I am Rayola Lee, a friend of the Higbees. We are pleased that Jay and Vachel read through their rough draft of Family History Adventures with us. When we saw what they were doing, I said, "It's fantastic. It will help a lot of people." A friend, Beverly Hahn, asked Vachel if she could invite some ladies from the ward over to the Higbee home for a family history class each month. I wanted to attend, but Thursday is the day Daryl and I work in the temple. One morning, Vachel invited me over for a class of my own. I was so excited to see some of her video clips and have a preview of their DVD.
I'm Darrell Lee. I kept asking Vachelle, will you have this DVD ready in time for our family reunion? After each of the classes, the ladies enjoyed visiting and had lunch together. Jewel Nell came and had a good time mingling with the other ladies. Along with Beverly, Mary Miles, Marla Miles, and Ruth Stringham came and enjoyed showing and looking at several family history books. This motivated everyone to work on her own history.
Beverly Hahn wrote, "To write about Don's and my life together has truly been a joy. I felt that while I was writing, Don was in my room urging me on. He has passed on. I think I felt in love with him all over again as I wrote about how much I loved him. It tugged at my heartstrings as I remembered our first meeting and the sweet things we did together. More and more memories just spilled out onto the computer."
This is Ruth Stringham. Isn't it interesting that Vachelle came to me for advice? Then years later, I asked for her advice about my personal history and that I was writing. I told her I needed some advice from an expert. Vachelle told me that she would be happy to help me, but she said didn't consider herself an expert. I said simply, I have never seen anybody else do what you do with family history.
As you can see, family history can be very fun. The Higbees have enjoyed their many, many adventures with their family history. We hope you have enjoyed this brief summary, and we want to thank everyone who participated in their inspiring books. Vachelle and Jay also appreciate all of you who have purchased one or many of their books. You have helped them sell over 1,000 family history books. May your family enjoy many family history adventures as well. From this beautiful pump organ that belonged to Elva Lorraine Taylor Barrington, on down through the years to the Assembly Hall organ on Temple Square, family members have played organs in relatives' homes as well as in churches. My sister-in-law, Ann Higbee Rogers, is a fourth-generation organ player. She performed on the Assembly Hall organ on Temple Square. This was recorded following the State Fair competition where she was a finalist in 1999. She was 16 years old. She played All Hail the Power of Jesus' Name. We hope you will enjoy it. We also hope you will take the time to view the family history audio and the video clips at the end of this DVD.